Hello and welcome to the Criminal Record. My name is Ryan Carroll and I'm joined as always today by our crime reporter Norman Silvester. Norman, how are you doing?
Not too bad. Pleased to speak with you, Ryan.
So as always today, Norman, we're going to discuss the latest developments in violence across the city. We're going to talk about the organised crime groups in Glasgow and Edinburgh in the last 6 months and an appeal for information in the unsolved Alistair Wilson case. We're also going to talk about a disturbing break-in and theft at a well-known pub. Norman, if you want to start us off, please, this is a story you've been covering for the past couple of months, as well as our other crime reporter, John Paul. Can you describe the arrests of Ross McGill, Stephen Lyons and the three others in Dubai on September the 16th and talk us through what happened?
Yes, this is, as you referred to earlier, we've been seeing a kind of outbreak of violence in the last 6 months since March. And it's involving various organised crime groups in Edinburgh and Glasgow. And the violence is said to have been orchestrated by a Ross McGill, who is based out in Dubai. And the targets have been friends, associates, and members of the Daniel crime family, both in Edinburgh and Glasgow. And we've seen fire bombings, cars set on fire, property set on fire, homes set on fire, and various other attacks at various premises, including machete attacks. And as we said earlier, this is said to have been orchestrated by a Ross McGill based out in Dubai. Targets were members of the Glasgow crime family, the Daniel family, and their associates. A particular target, or the main target, has been an convicted Edinburgh cocaine dealer, Mark Richardson, said to be an ally of the Daniel family. And he and an associate of Richardson is said in turn to have duped McGill in a cocaine deal, paying for a consignment, £500,000 consignment of cocaine with fake money. This in turn has prompted McGill to orchestrate these attacks through a kind of shadowy group of young men, teenagers called Tamo, Junto. And they in turn took the unusual step, not really seen before, of posting a lot of video of their attacks on various social media sites, including TikTok. The police in turn have responded by launching Operation Portaledge, which has resulted in 57 arrests of people involved in this violence. Of course, the news of these operations is carried to Dubai, and the authorities in Dubai, having been keen on the attention it's bringing to Dubai, they don't like the idea of organised criminals based there carrying out their activities in other countries. We're also aware that we believe the police authorities here, including Police Scotland and through government agencies, have been in touch with the Dubai authorities or the authorities in United Arab Emirates to express our concerns about the activities being orchestrated, the violence in Edinburgh and Glasgow being orchestrated from Dubai. So that's about the background. On September the 16th, the Dubai police launched an operation. They arrested Ross McGill and a number of associates, including Stephen Lyons, who's head of the so-called head of the Lyons crime family, another man, Stephen Jimison, who has convictions for cocaine dealing, a fourth man, Stephen Larwood, who's also got convictions for cocaine offences, and a fifth unnamed person who's said to be a friend and associate of Ross McGill from his time as leader of the Rangers Ultras group, Union Bears. So that's a bit of the background. So this is the Dubai authorities have got a bit fed up with all this publicity, all this negative publicity that's been generated.
I was going to ask, Norman, I mean, how would these guys have been looking over their shoulder expecting this might happen, or will this have come as a shock to them?
It looks like this has come as a shock. They probably felt they're pretty safe out in Dubai, as long as they're not committing criminality out there. They're pretty safe. But I think the bad publicity that's been generating, the volume of words in print and online, it's got back to the Dubai authorities. They've done it as a kind of crackdown on organised crime. So they may be looking at other individuals. But we know that McGill and the four others were arrested on September the 16th and held in custody for 12 days. They were interrogated and interviewed and we understand kept in quite primitive conditions. And they were eventually released at the weekend there and effectively ordered out of the country.
What do we know about the conditions in these prisons? What would that have been like for those guys?
Well, what we understand is that McGill and the 4 other individuals were taken to a prison somewhere between Dubai and Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. It was described, we described it as a black site. So basically, it doesn't really appear on any Google Maps or any kind of maps. And the allegations is that they were kept in a cell area or cells area with 40 other prisoners. The conditions were quite primitive. Apparently, they were blindfolded before they were taken to the prison. Once they were in the prison, they were each individually interviewed and interrogated almost like terrorist suspects. We understand that prior to or between the interviews, they were returned to their cells and the lights were kept on, so they had difficulty sleeping, maybe to disorientate them. We know it said that conditions in the cells were pretty primitive, that they didn't have access to toilet paper, and they were given food, but they had to be actually literally eat it off the floor. It was all pretty basic. But they were under these conditions for about 12 days, as I said, before they were released last weekend.
Yeah. I mean, this seems like quite a significant development in this case. And what happens next? What happens next for McGill and the others?
Well, what we know is that after their 12 days inside, they were effectively told they had to get out of the country, and their family, they were released to Abu Dhabi, and then from there they were basically told, contact your families, get them to pick you up and get out of the country. What we don't know is what's happened to the 5. We know the 4 were released, McGill, Lyons, and Jimison and Larwood. I'm not sure what's happened to the 5th person, but we certainly know that the 4 were released. We don't know where they've gone. Some suggestion that McGill, who is wanted in Scotland, may have gone to South America's possible contacts there. They may have gone a bit closer to home, maybe somewhere like Spain, because there's nothing necessarily stopping them from returning to the UK and or Scotland. We know that Stephen Lyons left Scotland in 2006 for his own safety after his cousin was murdered in an MOT garage shooting. We know Jimison had been in Dubai since 2013, so maybe they felt safe in Dubai and perhaps were apprehensive about their own safety in returning to Scotland. We know that McGill's facing possible arrest when he returns to Scotland. So basically, we don't really know where they are, but obviously, given their reputations and what's happened, there may be a limited sort of number of places that they could go to.
Yeah. I know that you've spoken the last couple of days, you've spoken to Police Chiefs Graham Pearson and Tom Wood in relation to this gang violence. Can you tell us a wee bit about how that chat went with them and what they were saying?
Well, I spoke to Graham Pearson, who's a former Director General of the Scottish Crime and Drug Enforcement Agency, and I spoke to Tom Wood, who's a former Deputy Chief Constable of Lothian Borders Police. Both during their police service were very active in targeting organised crime, going back more than 30 years, and were very familiar with a lot of the names and a lot of the activities. Their view is that the arrest of McGill and others and the fact they've been ordered out of Dubai creates a bit of a vacuum here in Scotland. You know, we've already seen 57 people arrested as part of this crackdown on the violence. We know other major criminal figures are currently behind bars who are connected both to the Lyons and Daniel crime families and others who themselves have been part of a long-running feud that's resulted in violence, murder and mayhem. So we know that there'll be others, according to Mr. Pearson, Ms. Wood, there'll be only too ready to step in. They may be people we don't know about, names that are not familiar to ourselves or maybe even the police. We also know that there'll be lieutenants, associates within the various organised crime groups that have been involved in this violence who may be ready to step in. You know, there's millions and billions of pounds to be made from the drugs trade, the cocaine trade, and no matter how many are arrested, there's always someone else willing to fill in that gap and to make the money that can, the millions that can be made. This also suggested that there might be opportunities for foreign criminal gangs. It's suggested Albanian gangs could step in. So there'll definitely be a vacuum. And so though the police have had great success in targeting these organised crime groups and bringing people to justice and putting them behind bars, there's always others ready to take their place. And that's what the police will probably be looking at now.
I'll certainly be interested to find out the next developments in this story. I'm sure we'll find out in the next few days or the next couple of weeks what will come of it.
Yeah, definitely fascinating, and as I think, I think it's watched this space definitely.
Yeah, another story that we had covered in the record in the last week is the bid to extradite Michael Riley to Spain for the murders of Ross Monaghan and Eddie Lyons Jr. At the most recent hearing this week, Riley said that his life was in danger. He felt his life was in danger if he was sent to a Spanish jail. Can you tell us, Norman, a wee bit more about this story and what you know about that?
Well, we know we've covered in criminal record before the double murder of Ross Monaghan and Eddie Lyons Jr. They were both shot dead in a pub in Fuengirola in the south of Spain. They'd been in the bar, which Ross Monaghan owns, Monaghan's bar, watching the Champions League final with other customers. A mystery man walks in, shoots them both dead, and runs out into a waiting car. That was on May the 31st. The police have been at pains to point out that they don't believe that's linked to the other violence that we've just talked about, linked to Ross McGill. But we know that both Ross Monaghan and obviously Eddie Lyons Jr. are both active members of the Lyons, or were active members of the Lyons crime family, who we know have been in a long-running feud with the Daniel family in Glasgow. But the police were at pains to point out that they didn't believe it was that their murders were linked to the current violence we've just been discussing. About 2 weeks after the murder, a man was arrested, Michael Riley, in Liverpool. He was taken to a prison in London. He's now awaiting extradition. He is this prime suspect for the murder. He is the person that Spanish authorities have identified, or they believe or allege, is responsible for the double murder, the double shooting of Monaghan and Eddie Lyons Jr. We don't know a lot about Michael Riley. He's 44. He's from the Liverpool area. As you would expect, he's pleading his innocence. He says he had nothing to do with this murder. He's obviously fighting the extradition. He's been kept in a prison in London at the moment. He's had a number of appearances at Westminster Magistrates Court. His case being heard. Most recent one was this week, but he pled his innocence. But obviously, he's got to kind of argue against his extradition. And he was saying that he believes that if he's extradited to Spain, his life will be in danger. He'll be in danger within the Spanish prison system. But also is arguing that the conditions are so poor in these conditions, in these prisons, that it would be a breach of his human rights for him to be extradited there. He's also, his solicitor in his defence said he's got a number of mental health issues, suffers from depression and anxiety, and they'll be using all these different factors to oppose the extradition. Again, we don't know much about him, but I think it's another one. Let's watch this space.
And in your experience, Norman, how likely do you think it is that he will be extradited?
Well, the extradition process is quite long and lengthy. We do have an extradition treaty with Spain. Spain's a traditional bolt hole for foreign criminals, but we can extradite them. It does happen on a fairly regular basis. I think the extradition treaty was signed in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, so it's been in place for a while, but it can take a long time. I think the courts are not reluctant to grant extradition, but they like to dot the I's and cross the T's. So I think this could be quite a lengthy process. And I think that there's another hearing scheduled for later this year at Westminster Magistrates Court. And this is something that could definitely drag on, certainly into next year. And also, if the extradition is granted to Michael Riley, he can appeal that. So I think, again, it's a watch the space, but I think we'll be looking maybe another year or so, maybe longer, before we find out if he is to be extradited and if the extradition is to be granted.
And just lastly on this one, I mean, we spoke about the conditions in the Dubai jail prison cells. You kind of just mentioned there about the Spanish jail cells. What conditions are they like in Spain?
Well, the suggestion is that perhaps not quite as primitive as the Dubai prisons. Obviously, in the Dubai system, it's there as a deterrent. as much as anything else. And that have been issues with people, British nationals detained in Dubai in the past and have complained about their treatment. We know that the Spanish prisons can be pretty primitive as well, pretty basic. Whether they're any worse than some of the Scottish prisons, we don't know. Yeah. But I think traditionally the view is that it's more a kind of zero tolerance in terms of people's treatment in prison. So it may well be that those that are extradited to Spain, whether it be Michael Riley or whoever, may find the conditions, not as humane as they are in the British system.
Okay, we'll need to see what comes of that one as well. Another story that you had in the paper yesterday, I believe, was a conversation with former Metropolitan Police detective and host of the Hunted documentary on Channel 4, Peter Blakesley, is it?
Peter Blakesley.
Blakesley, yeah. So that was to mark the 21st anniversary of the murder of Alistair Wilson. Can you give us a wee bit of background on that murder for those that don't know too much about it, and just kind of tell us how your chat went with Peter?
Alistair Wilson was a father of two. He was a business bank manager with the Bank of Scotland. He lived in the seaside town of Nairn, and in late November 2004, he answered a call at his door. He was shot dead, died a short time later in hospital, and basically the murder has remained unsolved to this day. The police initially wondered if it was connected to his banking and business activities, but they drew a bit of a blank there. They've also looked at a possible connection to a neighbouring hotel, the Havelock. Alistair was involved in a dispute at the time with the hotel over a planning application. The hotel had applied for retrospective planning permission to put in a beer garden. Alistair had objected, and he was shot dead at the door of his home only a couple of days after the hotel itself had received his letter of objection via the local council. There's been all manner of theories over the years. In September last year, the Lord Advocate, Dorothy Bain, ordered Police Scotland to carry out a complete reinvestigation from start to finish, as opposed to a review. There have been quite a few reviews in the past, but she ordered a completely new investigation, and there was a new investigation team set up, and they're working away at that at the moment. We also know that in the last year or so, or last year and a half, the Wilson family have complained a bit about delays in the investigation and a lack of information, and concerns over why it's taking so long to solve this case. And Peter Blakesley is a former Metropolitan Police detective. He's better known as the presenter of the Channel 4 reality TV show Hunted, where he played the part of the chief. And he's also an author and a sort of TV commentator on criminal matters. And he's taken a particular interest in the Alistair Wilson case. He's written the only book on the subject that came out in 2018. And we've interviewed him in the past. He's identified a suspect for the murder. I believe it's a local man who'd been in his early 20s at the time, would have access to weapons and firearms. And we know that this particular individual recently completed a prison sentence for drug offences. So Peter Blake's taken a big interest in it. He's come along with different theories, which he's happy. He says he's always happy to share with the police. So he's coming up to Nairn in late November to mark the 21st anniversary of Alistair's murder. He's setting up kind of base camp, if you like, at the Havelock Hotel, which is directly across from where Alistair lived and where his wife and two grown-up children now live. And he says he's happy. We'd like to speak to anyone with information about the murder in complete confidence. And he's also happy to pass that information on to the police. And he's also said he's willing to meet the police to share what information he has. So we know that's all happening at a time when the police are doing this complete major reinvestigation. We don't know how that's progressing in terms of identifying a suspect, but we know they put a lot of groundwork in, and a lot of us involved putting previous evidence statements, digitalising it, and also they've done various appeals for information, and I understand quite a number of people have come forward with information.
And you have to just hope for Alistair's family after all this time that they'll finally get some answers.
Yes, that's a big one. That's it's probably not only Scotland, but one of Britain's most baffling unsolved murders. It appears on the surface to be little or no motive, no clear motive. There's a kind of random element to it. We know the killer turns up at the door, speaks. His wife, Alistair's wife, Veronica, answers the door. She goes back inside. He comes out. The gunman gives him a letter or an envelope with the name Paul written on it. He goes back inside, comes out again, and then is shot several times and dies a short time later in hospital. And that's really is about as far as we know about it. We understand there's very little, less no eyewitnesses or sort of forensic evidence, and we've got to hope, that at the time of the murder, Alistair's 2 children were literally toddlers. Had been reading them a bedtime story and put them to bed. Now they're grown up, so it's affected their whole lives, and obviously affected Veronica's life. And we can only hope for Veronica and the 2 children that we can finally get justice for them.
Again, just lastly on this one, in your experience, Norman, covering stories where it's been this amount of time that's passed since a crime has taken place, how likely do you think that this family will get answers? Well,
the longer this the case drags on, the less you would think maybe the less likely there will be answers. However, the police now have got the obviously sort of major technology and forensic developments which they can look at.
Yeah,
it may well be that there's something in this case, a witness statement somewhere. They've done it in the past where you can, whether it's through computer science or forensic science, you can maybe identify something or someone. So there is a chance. Obviously, as I say, the longer it goes on, you've got to think that the less likely there will be an outcome. But we've seen quite a number of cases recently come to the courts, some cases dating back to the 1970s, where people suspected of a murder or murders dating back that period have been solved. So fingers crossed, it's still a strong possibility that this can be solved.
Fingers crossed for the family, for sure. Just lastly, Norman, a story, I think it's worth mentioning this one as well, that you covered on Tuesday, I believe. The Clutha bar, which of course was involved in the helicopter crash in 2013, that was involved in a break-in at the weekend there. Can you speak to us about that? And I believe you spoke to the owner as well, so can you just tell us a wee bit about that?
That's right. People remember the Clutha bar just in Stockwell Street, just in the centre of Glasgow, next to the River Clyde. The police helicopter crashed at the bar in November 2013. There were 7 customers and 3 occupants of the police helicopter were killed. The bar was closed for about a year and a half. It reopened in 2015. It was reopened by then First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. And the owner, Alan Crossan, and his staff have done well to get the bar back up and running. And one of the things they did after the terrible tragedy was to set up the Clutha Trust through the pub. So basically the bar and the customers do a lot of charity work through the bar, through the Clutha Trust. And in particular, they've been doing stuff recently, helping people in Glasgow pay their electricity bills, doing a lot of work with charities that help run food banks. They produce 200 pizzas a week, which are distributed through food banks, hot into people that don't necessarily get a hot meal. So the pub's doing a lot of good work in the community after that terrible tragedy. But at the weekend there, Friday night into Saturday morning, there was a break-in at the rear entrance at the beer garden, and the robber or robbers got in through the door and stole the contents of a till, several £100s. But also the owners have had to replace the doors, cost them about £1,200. And I spoke to Alan Crossan, the owner, and obviously he's hopeful that the person or persons responsible will be brought to justice. He also says crimes like this impact on the good work that they do, because obviously the money that they're spending on the door and to replace the cash in the till was money they could have gone towards their good charitable works. Yeah,
and I take it there's been no update in the last couple of days in terms of arrests or anything like that?
Not heard anything today. I'll be checking up later today, but I know the police are appealing for witnesses and their inquiries are ongoing at the moment.
Yeah. Well, thanks as always, Norman, for your insight in these and all the other stories as well. Appreciate it. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Join us next week where we'll be discussing any updates on these stories and any others across Scotland. Thanks again for joining us.